First things first, the most important thing that you can learn when starting to learn music theory, what do you reckon it'd be, right? What's the most basic thing that you're going to learn in music theory? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, a whole step and a half step, which is, yes, that is true. The most basic thing would be a half step and a whole step. But some people think, oh, scales, and some people think, oh, it'll be an arpeggio or something like that. But no. The most, yep, Glenn's got it, intervals. Intervals are the building blocks of music. They come before everything. Everything that you do in music in terms of description of things, analyzing things, creating things is all based on intervals. So intervals, if you've seen any of my videos on intervals, I do some really in-depth ones, but an interval is basically a measurement of musical distance. That's all it is. Imagine a ruler, a measuring stick. Imagine just that, but for music. That's all it is, just from one spot to another. So if I get a note like this, and then I play another note like this, there's a distance between them. And I don't mean in terms of frets or anything like that. I just mean in terms of, well, it's actually whole steps and half steps, I suppose. But it's taking the equal tempered system, the chromatic scale, and then dividing it up, dividing an octave up, and then we can measure from somewhere to somewhere. Now, important thing to mention, it's not scale degrees. Now, scale degree, let's start at the basic, the absolute basics, right? Because we've kind of got 3 steps for this beginning bit. First of all, we've got to learn about half steps and whole steps. Then you have to learn about how you create a major scale. So that does come before the intervals. But once you've got the major scale out of the way and got onto the intervals, then you can kind of ignore that for a bit. So a whole step and a half step. What's a whole step and a half step? Okay, so from a bass perspective, a half step is 1 fret, and a whole step is 2 frets. Okay? In terms of actual notes, if I was to, on a piano, a whole step is usually, well, actually, I won't go into the piano side of it. Let's ignore that for now. So C to D, for instance, is a whole step. C to C sharp or C to D flat, that's a half step. Okay? So it's good. It's easy to see them on a bass because you can actually just see it in terms of frets rather than looking at white notes and black notes and then kind of getting a bit confused. But basically, a half step on a piano is just moving up one adjacent key. So if the next key is a black key, then that's a half step, and if the next key is a white key, then that's a half step. It's just up one key, not a musical key, but a physical key, right? And then a whole step would be 2 of them. Okay, so 2 half steps. Half steps and whole steps, we've got that, right? So, a major scale is made up of a formula of whole step, but well, I'll do it in terms of tones and semitones first for the European people out there, because it rolls off the tongue more easily. So, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. 2 tones and a semitone, 3 tones and a semitone, right? Tone is a whole step, semitone is a half step. So whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. WWH, WWWH, right? So 2 and 1 and then 3 and 1, right? So if we start on a C, let's start on an A so that we can see how it works there. So if I take an open A string, right? And I work through that formula. Remember what I said? Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. 2 and a 3, right? Up a whole step from A. What's that note? It's a B. Up another whole step, so it's our second whole step. We get to a C sharp. Up a half step, we're at the D. Up a whole step, E. Up a whole step, F sharp. Up a whole step, G sharp. What are we up to? What did I just get up to? Oh yeah, half step. We're at the A. So that's it. So we've gone up A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And no matter what you start that on, what notes you started on, that whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, is the same no matter what. You just apply it to a particular pitch and then just work up through those notes. And it always moves alphabetically through them. So it's always going to be in order. You don't repeat any of those notes in there on major scales. You might do on a half step, whole step, diminished scale or something crazy like that. But in the majority of heptatonic scales, which is what a major scale is, it's all in alphabetical order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Whatever they are, sharps or flats. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, right? You don't repeat a note. It's not A, B, D flat, and then move. You don't skip one, leave that for pentatonics. You just move through in alphabetical order. So I'm trying to get a few of these little basic things out of the way. So that's how we create a major scale. So it's just that formula. And whatever the notes are, the consequence of that, that's what they are. So if I start on a G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Ignore fretboard patterns for now on this initial bit, because you can learn them as a fretboard pattern, that's how you'll all probably learn them. Any of you that know a major scale, I know a major scale, that's that pattern. Forget that. It's a formula of half steps and whole steps, and it's easier to see that formula on a single string than it is across the neck. So when you've learned them on one string like that and you kind of get that formula, then you can put them in whatever configuration you want on the neck. So for instance, that A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp that we had, well, I could play it here. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Put them wherever you want them. So that was that popular pattern. I could play them anywhere. So A, B, then C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, and then A. You could put them anywhere you want. But some of them are easier to play than others, and just are a lot more work across in a much more linear fashion physically. So that's how we arrive at the most popular of those. Obviously, you could start it on the fourth finger, you could start it on the first finger, but I'll leave that for another time. But that's a popular way of looking at scales in terms of patterns. Second finger. So you've got 3 different patterns starting on different fingers, and they give you them in different positions, which is a really good way of making your way around the neck. So instead of just having that one little box shape, we've actually expanded this way and we've expanded that way. So I can come down. Oops. And you just kind of keep track of where you are with each one of them. So that's just a little tip about doing it from a kind of pattern perspective, but you really need to know it from a whole steps, half steps perspective first. So then, and this is why I'm talking about the theory thing. You learn this when you first start music theory exams and grades and things. You learn that formula, and so then you can apply it. It doesn't matter what instrument you're playing, you just know that there's that formula. Of course, then once you know that formula, you ignore it because then you just learn what the notes are for each one of them. So you just learn that G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp is G major, and A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp is A. You just learn the orders of those things. And on bass, obviously, you couldn't play them as a pattern, but you really do want to know them as the actual notes. I kind of see scales are a little bit like times tables in maths. So you're kind of moving into different keys, and each key is like a different times table. So if you're in G major, it's a bit like doing the 2 times table, and then D major might be like the 3 times table. I mean, it's not a direct analogy, but it's just that you have to see them as the intervals within there differently. So, but I'll get onto that in a minute. So that's the major scale. So we've got that, right? So next up, where do these intervals come into the picture? Well, first of all, let's look at scale degrees, because scale degrees aren't intervals. And I'll get through all this bit as quick as I can. So scale degrees, we just number the notes of the major scale. Let's ignore minor scales for now, or any other scales. Just forget about that. We're talking about traditional music theory, just original keys, right? So let's say that we're in C, right? Well, let's move to C now. So we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? I'm sure you all know that pattern. If you don't know that pattern, but I'm sure you all do, I'm playing 3rd fret, 5th fret on the A string, 2nd, 3rd, 5th fret on the D string, and 2nd, 4th, and 5th frets on the G string. with second finger, fourth finger, first finger, second finger, fourth finger, first finger, third finger, fourth finger. Right? So that's a C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. No sharps, no flats, right? So, scale degrees. All we do is we number each of those notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1, right? So we don't call it 8, not in terms of scale degrees. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. So it's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So in the key of C major, C is the first, D is the second, E is the third. It doesn't matter where they are on the bass. If I play an E here, that's still the third of the C major scale. If I play the G there, that's still the fifth of the C major scale. If I play an A, well, no, let's not get into that yet. If I play the F down here, that's still the fourth of the C major scale. It's completely, the register is irrelevant, right? So that's scale degrees, and it's why we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because it's all just based on that particular scale. Now, another interesting fact for you, for any of you that don't know, scale degrees never used to be just numbers. Traditionally in music theory, they had names, and this, if you don't know these names, might shed a little bit of light on some other things, right? So what they used to be, and still are to some, you know, they still are. Let's say we're in the key of C major. The first C there, that's the tonic, right? I'm sure you've all heard that, the tonic, right? The second is the supertonic. Now, you might not have heard of that one, right? The third is the mediant. Fourth is the subdominant. Fifth is the dominant. So you'll probably know that one. Fifth is the dominant. The sixth is the submediant. And the seventh is the leading tone or leading note, right? Tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading tone, and back to the tonic again. So just in case you didn't know what they were, or you'd never heard of those apart from the tonic and the dominant, and maybe wondered, why is the dominant called the dominant? Why is a dominant 7 chord called a dominant 7 chord? Why is the tonic called a tonic? It's these names, it's these Greek names for these degrees of the scale. So just a quick, easy way of memorizing this. You learn the tonic and the dominant first, the first and the fifth, right? The supertonic is easy to get because think super, larger, it's above, so it's just the next one up. Tonic, supertonic, okay? So get that. Mediant, kind of think midway between the root and the dominant, right? So medium, just think that. So mediant. So the third is the mediant. 4 is just below the fifth, so that's the subdominant. So you need to learn the tonic, the subdominant, and dominant. That's the 1, 4, and 5. Submediant, the sixth, it's the third, but below, right? So we had the third going up, which was the mediant, the third coming down from the tonic. That's the submediant. And then the leading tone is the odd one out. That's the one leading back into the tonic. And that is literally why it's called that. It's leading back in. So leading back in, the leading note, okay? Tonic, supertonic, mediant. I actually put these up. I'll just show you quickly. There you go. Tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading note, right? So you might be thinking, well, why the hell do I need to learn that? And this is what I'm saying, you know, like with music theory, that you learn a lot of stuff that you don't use all the time, but it does help to iron out these dimples in your knowledge, because it really helps with learning certain things later on that you can never make sense of. You're like, why is the dominant 7 called the dominant 7 chord? And if you don't know about that, and then why, and about chord construction, about the chord that's built on the fifth chord, on the fifth degree, which is the dominant degree, it all makes sense then once you've kind of gone through it. But unless you do it in this ordered way, this structured way, you don't understand, right? So that's scale degrees. Now that's not intervals, but intervals sound very much like scale degrees, because here's an example of an interval, a perfect fifth. But you can have a scale degree of a fifth. So they sound like the same thing. So you think, okay, I'm in the key of C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th. That's the 5th of C major. But C to G is a perfect 5th. So people get mixed up. They think, oh, okay, scale degrees, intervals, they're both the same thing. But they're not. Remember what I said about scale degrees, about how the kind of, irrespective of register. So if I have, if we're in the key of C major, the C is the tonic, or first, G is the 5th, G is the 5th, even if I play it up there. Intervals are measurements. So C, let's use a really common interval that's on bass. I'll play the C here instead, okay? So what's the third? What's a third up from the C? It's going to be the E, right? So that's a third, which is actually a major third as an interval. But if we were to take it up here, up an octave, so we're taking the E up there to the 9th fret of the G string, okay? There's the major third, and there's the same note, the E, up an octave. That's a 10th. It's a major 10th. That's the difference. That's an interval. That's not a scale degree. Okay? You can see kind of how that works there. Also, intervals can be measured from any place to anywhere, irrespective of key. So, with scale degrees, you have to know what the key is. You know, you're in the key of C. The G is the 5th, right? But if you were in the key of G, the G is the tonic, right? They're just individual notes, members of a thing, of a key. But C to G, for an interval, you always have to have from and to. You have a starting point and an end point. You don't with scale degrees. A scale degree is just a number within a key, right? But C to G is a perfect 5th. E to G is a minor third. No matter where I play that, no matter what key it is. So, for instance, let's think. C to G is a perfect 5th, right? And if we're in the key of C major, yeah, it's a perfect 5th. And if I'm in the key of G major, that C to G is still a perfect 5th. It's from and to. It's not the 4th and the octave in G major. It's just a measurement from C to G. So this is the difference. Scale degrees are numbers of, you know, in a scale. Intervals are measurements from one note to another. It's a different thing. It's just that we use the same kind of terminology, and they're derived originally from those scale degrees, the names of those scale degrees. So in terms of first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So in terms of the names of those intervals, let's quickly run through those. We get the first set of them, those distances from the major scale. So if we take a C major scale again. So we're going to be measuring from C to each of the notes in turn. So C up to D. Now, as a scale degree, that's a second, but we need to add the quality. So C to D, it's a major second. Now, all you have to think, before I go through them, in a major scale, all those intervals are, 1, 4, and 5 are perfect, and the rest are major. Okay, that's all you have to remember. So 1 to 4 is perfect, 1 to 1 is perfect, 1 to 5 is perfect. The rest of them are major. So 1 to 2, so C to D would be a major second, C to E is a major third, C to F is a perfect fourth, C to G is a perfect fifth, C to A is a major sixth, C to B is a major seventh, and C to C would be a perfect octave. And then if you carried on, C up to that D would be a major ninth, because it's the same as the D here, but up. So it's a ninth. And see how we're continuing the numbers? C up to that E, that's going to be that major 10th. C up to the F up there, that's going to be a perfect 11th. Then a perfect 12th, up to the octave up on the 5th. And then C up to that A would be a major 13th. And then up to the B is going to be a 14th. And then eventually we get to the 15th, which is 2 octaves up. Okay, so that's how intervals work. There, you have a quality and you have that number. Now, each of those intervals is going to have a kind of whole step, half step kind of distance, right? So when you're moving up a whole step like that, that's going to be a major second. Now, it can be other things, as I'll get into, but in terms of the actual note name, C to D, it's going to be a second of some kind, and that's another really important point with intervals. It's alphabetical. So C to D. It's always going to be a second. It doesn't matter if it's C flat, C triple sharp, and D double flat, D double sharp, triple sharp, quadruple sharp. It doesn't matter what it would be, right? D flat, C, any kind of C to any kind of D, because of the alphabet, the alphabetical ordering is a second of some kind. C to E is always going to be a third of some kind. A to B is always going to be a second of some kind. A to C, whatever it is going to be a third of some kind. And then depending on what the sharps and the flats are, that kind of determines what kind of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh they are. So we've got that basic set of them. So what I would say as a bass player, really, especially if you're into the pattern kind of thing, is to learn those intervals and then move them around and get used to what they sound like. Get used to what the sound of a third is. So get used to the look of it, see that third on one string as well. But get used to the sound of that. Ba-bum. Move it around. Harmonic interval and melodic interval. A melodic interval is one where you play one note at a time as a melody. Harmonic interval is when we play them as a chord. So that's a harmonic interval, that's a melodic interval. Just get used to the sound of that. That's a major third. Just get used to it, right? Perfect fifth. Each of them has they all have their own emotive quality. What is it? That was that. That's of the old Star Trek series, the original. I think. So that's a fifth, sixth. So that's a major sixth. So they've all got their own kind of sound, and you want to get used to how they sound. And this is what I mean by these are the building blocks of music. When you first start doing ear training, you usually start by learning what the intervals are. Ba-bam. So that was on a B. So ba-bam. That's a perfect fifth, and you get used to what that is. And just all of you learn what they are as scales. You learn all of these different things, and so you learn intervals, melodic lines, all of this stuff as ear training. So when you're learning these intervals, you also want to sit there and listen to them and learn how they sound, and look for them in bass lines that you play. So if you're playing a bass line, for instance, that sounds like this, whatever it's going to have, you can see that I've used an octave there. There's a building block. I've got a minor seventh. I'll get to the minor seventh in a minute. So there's a minor seventh. I tend to see all melodies, bass lines, everything, chords, everything. I see it intervallically. I kind of see all these intervals all the time. And if you know all your intervals and what they sound like, that's where talking through the instrument comes. Because as you're learning these things, what they sound like, what they look like, what the notes are, the whole bit, when you put them together, it's like a melting pot of all this stuff. So if you've got, let's think of something that's got, even. Really obvious one there. That's that minor third, and you'll see it all the time. Just whatever you're playing, see those notes in there. So there I just played up through root, major third, and major seventh. I know what those intervals sound like. So as I play them, I'm kind of hearing them as I play them. Okay? So that's why I say they're the building blocks of music. So you want to learn what they look like, what they sound like, all of that jazz, right? So once you've learned the major and the perfect ones, then you start adding the minors and all the other ones into the mix. So For now, we'll just look at the minors and the diminished and augmenteds on the basic ones there in the major scale. So if we've got the right, okay, well here's the rule first of all. So to create a minor interval, you take a major interval and you flatten that top note. Okay, so if it's C to D is a major second, C to D flat is a minor second. And here's the important thing to know: it has nothing to do with minor scales. Because people always end up saying that. They say, "Oh, I don't get it. There's like, why is there no minor second? Why is that second in a minor scale? Why do you say that's a major second?" It's because it is. That's, you know, the interval has nothing to do with the minor scale, right? So all you're doing is taking the major interval. Ignore the scales now, keys, all of that stuff. We've got that basic set of those major intervals, and we drop that top note. So C to D. That's a major second. C to D flat is a minor second. C to E is a major third. C to E flat is a minor third. Ignore the frets for now and the patterns. Just take those notes. C to E is a major third. C to E flat. I flattened it. Whatever it is, you flatten it, take it down one note, down a half step, and that's a minor third. Let's ignore the perfects for now. Sixth, C to A is a major sixth. C to A flat is a minor sixth. C to B is a major seventh. C to B flat is a minor seventh. It's as simple as that. You learn your major intervals, and then you just flatten that top note to get a minor, right? Perfect intervals. You take a perfect interval. If you sharpen that top note, you get an augmented, and if you flatten it, you get a diminished. So let's take the perfect fifth, C to G. Bear in mind, I'm doing all this on a root note of C just to make things easy for now, but I'll just switch into a different key in a sec. So C to G, we've got as a perfect fifth. So like I said, take that top note up a half step to G sharp. It's not an A flat, it's a G sharp. Remember what I said about the alphabetical ordering? C to G sharp is an augmented fifth. Because you could look at that as an A flat rather than a G sharp. In that case, it'd be a minor sixth. That's the difference. An augmented fifth, in terms of what it looks like there, that looks like it could be an augmented fifth, or it could be a minor sixth. Same thing, C to A flat, C to G sharp. It's the alphabetical ordering that makes the difference. So C to G, it's a type of fifth. C to A, it's a type of sixth. And that will all be based on context. It'll be based on key, it'll be based on chords, it'll be based on all of that kind of stuff as to which one of those it's going to be, right? So you sharpen the top note of a perfect one to get an augmented interval, and you flatten it. So C to G flat is a diminished fifth. Okay? So we've got C to G sharp, augmented fifth, C to G, perfect fifth, C to G flat is a diminished fifth. Do the same thing with the F. So C to F, perfect fourth. C to F sharp is an augmented fourth. C to F flat is a diminished fourth. And you might be looking at that and thinking, hold on, that's an E, not an F flat. No, remember what I said? We're looking at the alphabet here. So it's C to F of some kind. So when you flatten that, it becomes an F flat. Looks like a major third, doesn't it? No, in this instance, it's a diminished fourth. This is called enharmonic equivalency. So it's just enharmonically a different thing, right? It looks the same, but it looks the same, it sounds the same, but it's got a different label, right? And like I said, this is all based on other factors. And this is why you need to learn this kind of stuff first. Not what the actual instances are going to be. You don't need to learn when that's going to be, when, you know, the practical application, because there is a limitless number of practical applications. You just learn the theory side of it first, and then you'll start to see it in stuff and go, right, because you've got this sort of foundation of knowing that. It seems pointless at first. Like, why do you need to know that? When are you going to see an F flat? When are you going to see a B double flat? You know, that kind of stuff. But trust me, it does come into play later on. And it's better to kind of have a more advanced knowledge of the base. I know that sounds a bit daft, doesn't it? An advanced knowledge of the basics. But you're more than a basic knowledge of the advanced. So, yeah, so that's the basic intervals, right? So you've got the minors and the diminished. I'll just go into one extra thing with that. That you can also have diminished and augmented seconds and thirds and sixths as well. So what you can do is if you have C to D, right? That's a major second. You take it down a half step, that becomes a minor second. We'll go down one more, which is actually the same note there. It's a C, but it's actually a D double flat. That would be a diminished second. And yep, I know this is getting really weird because we're on the same fret there. C to D double flat is the same fret, but in terms of the actual description of it, that's actually a diminished second. So it kind of, if you can think of the major there in the middle, and then you come down one, you're down onto the minor, then onto the diminished, and you can raise it to make it an augmented. So C to D sharp would be an augmented second. Yep, it looks like a minor third as well, which it is. But like I said, depending on context. And you might be thinking, when would you have a sharp second like that? I'll tell you where. The Hendrix chord. That's a 7 sharp 9. Ninth is the second. It's sharpened. It's actually an augmented second. So you do get them. You get them a lot with Hendrix. So, Foxy Lady, all that stuff. So that's the basics of intervals. So you need to learn those. Now, I know that I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there. I mean, basically, you just need to know your major and minor ones. Oh, and by the way, it's also worth looking at those from different root notes. I said keys before, but it's not keys. Nothing to do with keys, like I said. Intervals, you learn them from different root notes, let's say. So if I was to measure from A flat to E flat, that's a perfect fifth, right? A flat to E flat. Think A, B, C, D, E. It's a type of fifth, so A flat to E flat. So what would an augmented fifth be? A flat to E flat is a perfect fifth. What's an augmented fifth going to be? It's going to be A flat to E natural. It's always worth working out how these things are going to be from different notes, like flats and sharps and things like that, because then you start to see it differently. When you learn everything from C, you kind of get used to seeing everything as natural notes, and then, oh, it's an augmented, we've sharpened it, thinking C to G sharp, let's say. But that's not always the case. It's not always going to be a sharp of some kind. Like there, A flat to E natural so A flat to E is an augmented fifth. We've still sharpened it, but it's just that the flat's now become a natural. So that's the basics of intervals. You need to learn what those are. And even if it's just learning them as patterns, so that then you can, because I know a lot of you are going to say, oh man, I've got to learn all of those as A flat to E flat's a perfect fifth, and then A flat to D flat's a perfect fourth. Well, you will eventually, but for now, if you could actually just learn them as the patterns, and you at least get the basics of it, right? So next up, we've learned whole steps, half steps, and then we've learned and major scales. We've learned what those are. We've now learned what intervals are, and now know that they're completely irrespective of the scales. We've now got intervals as little building blocks in their own right. So don't think of them as being part of scales or keys or anything like that. That's scale degrees. We're looking at, and here's another example, right, just to kind of solidify that. If I'm in the key of C major, right, and I want to measure E to G, which is the third to the fifth, what's that interval? Well, it's not the third to the fifth. We don't say it like that. That's a minor third. E to G is a minor third. We're still in the key of C major. The key is irrelevant. E to G is a minor third no matter what key we're in. If we're in the key of F sharp, if we still measured E to G, then they're completely out of the key. That's still a minor third. The key is completely irrelevant. So E to G, if we're in the key of C major, is a minor third. But if we're in the key of G major, and those two notes, it's the sixth and the octave, it's still a minor third. So that's a really important point to know. So once you've learned about those, once you've got to intervals, then you can start looking at chord construction, which is a really important thing to know about. And this is why I said earlier on that when you learn about chord construction, you start to understand what all of those chord symbols are. So when you're looking at a chord progression, a guitarist comes into the band, or let's say you've got in a jazz band, jazz fusion band, some dude's giving you some crazy chord chart with like loads of weird altered extensions on it. Doesn't matter. You'll know. If you learn about chord construction, about how chords are constructed, you'll understand the landscape that you're looking at. You'll be able to think, oh, okay, I know what the notes are in those chords. Why do you need to know the notes that are in those chords? Because that's how you create bass lines. It's easy to think that if you see a chord progression of C, F, and G, so let's say, okay, so there's a chord progression in the key of C major, chord 1 to chord 4 to chord 5, which I'll get to in a minute. If you saw that on a chord chart, C major, F major, G major, you might think, oh, okay, I know what to do. I play C, then I play F, and then I play G. There we go, there's a bass line. It's all root notes. But then you have to think to yourself, hold on, how do all these bass players, all these, all my heroes, how do they make bass lines that don't just sound like that have got like melodic movement in them, that move around, you know, or they might even put in a little thing here and there, you know, or put in a little fill, you know. How do they know what notes to put in there? Well, this is where chord tones come in. You learn what the notes are in those chords. So you know that a C major chord is C and G. You know that an F major chord is F, A, and C. And you know that a G major chord is G, B, and D. And you learn what those are. Now, you don't have to learn them as chords. You don't have to learn that. You learn them as arpeggios. So just in case you don't know what an arpeggio is, it's just a chord played one note at a time. Here's a chord as a block chord. Here's a chord as an arpeggio. Same thing. So an arpeggio is just a chord played one note at a time. You know, when guitarists first start playing and then they start talking about arpeggios, they're just thinking about sweep arpeggios and stuff, and Yngwie Malmsteen, etc. You know, so it's not that. It's a chord just played one note at a time. And the beauty of that is that as bass players, we can, when we play, let's say that chord progression I just played, C, F, G, and back. Now that's a really boring, basic, kind of childlike bass line, but that is it's got more going on than the simple root notes. Now, you obviously don't have to outline all the arpeggios of all the chords in every bass line that you play. That'd be silly. But what it is it's a palette. It's like an artist with a palette. You've got a bunch of notes that you can use. It's the framework that you work around. Yes, you can put in anything. You can put in any notes around there. But these are the notes of the chords. So they're the notes that blend with that. Anything else that you put in there is going to rub up against it. So if I play that C major and then we put in an F, it wants to resolve. So these are points of resolution. So it's, think suspension and release. You know, tension, release, right? Everything in music is tension and release. All of the intervals, all of the notes in a key, all of those things have got different levels of tension and release. And it's all relative to the chords that you're hearing at any one point. I mean, you've got sort of points of that within a key, but it really is based around the chords that you're hearing. So if you're hearing a C major chord, like I said, if I played that and then we put an F in it, that's in the key. Let's say we're in the key of C major. There's a C major chord, but the F, which is still in the key, wants to resolve, right? Because it's not in the chord, it's a dissonance. So those notes are consonant. And the F, the D, and the A, even though they're in the C major key that we're in at the moment, they're dissonant, okay? Now, you'll have to excuse me that I'm not reading all the comments yet, because I'm just, I can tell that people are writing all these comments, but I've not. I'll get to those after I've just finished doing all this stuff. So, very, very important to, I've got congestion. So, very important to know the notes of those chords. They're called chord tones. What's the difference between chord tones and arpeggios? Well, nothing really. An arpeggio is just an order of chord tones. So in the key of C major, chord of C major, there's a C major triad. Each of those notes in there are called chord tones. Okay, so G's a chord tone, E's a chord tone, C's a chord tone of that chord. when we put them in an order, C, E, G, G, E, C, however we do that, that's an arpeggio. It's just a linear ordered line of chord tones. So think chord tone is an individual note of the chord, and arpeggio is an ordered line of them, right? Again, we're talking about absolute basics of things here, but this is where kind of knowing about all these little basics, even though it's little details, it really helps as you climb higher through it. And people like to jump the gun. They like to go further and further along. They like to think, okay, well, I'm going to learn about modes. You know, they're not even learned about intervals, but yet it's like, oh man, I'm going to learn about the Lydian scale or the Superlocrian scale and something. And then they look at a description of it and see the intervallic construction of it, and they're like, oh man, I don't really know what this sharp 4 is that's in there in that Lydian scale. What's that all about? You know, you kind of get that kind of thing going on. It's like, ignore modes, man. You want to learn intervals first, because they're the building blocks. Once you got that, everything else makes perfect sense, because it's all just built out of them. You can describe any musical structure using intervals. And like I say, irrelevant. The key is irrelevant. I studied serial composition for quite a while. And serial composition, you know, it's an atonal method of composition, in case you just didn't know. Arnold Schoenberg and Oldenburg and Anton Webern. So it's not in a key, right? But you can still describe all of those things, like in a 12-tone row, as intervals. So you can still, no matter what it is, the craziest stuff, unless it's microtonal, then you got a bit of a problem. But most stuff in Western music can be described as sets of intervals, because all it is measuring that note to that note, right? So let's get on to chord construction. So what we got? We've got, what kind of chords have we got? Well, we've got 2-note chords. I mean, a single note moving around, that's not a chord, is it? A chord's several different notes played together. So two notes played together is called a dyad, which you could just call a harmonic interval, like I was talking about earlier. They're dyads, right? But we don't really talk about dyads when we're talking about chords. You can break them down to that, but really we're talking about the most basic one being the triad. So that's a 3-note chord, okay? So, and then you just move through. Now, you could go into like heptads and all that kind of stuff, but we don't really talk, and sexads and sextads or whatever you'd call it, and nonads, and you don't have gonads, but so you've got all these things, and you don't really need those. Once you go past triads, then you just call them 7th chords, or you call them or maybe 11th, 13th chords, or added note chords, or suspended chords. You've got like different ones, right? So for a triad, and this is the thing that was the light bulb moment for me when I studied harmony, the most basic part of harmony as well. And I can even tell you when I learned this, and it was actually at music college, and it was just the very I wasn't on my degree or anything. This is pre-degree. We were going through how chords are created, and there's a thing called tertian harmony, right? So it's stacked thirds. And I remember finding that out, and about how there's a system to creating all these chords. And before, I just thought that, oh, well, you know, there's a whole host of different chords, and we just, you know, you move your fingers around and you come up with something, and then they give it a name afterwards. But no, there is actually a big system to this. To the basic kind of tertian harmony. I mean, once you get into Alan Holdsworth levels or harmonic projections and all those kind of things in contemporary classical music, you know, then all bets are off. But in basic kind of classical harmony and then into jazz harmony, it's all based on tertian harmony. I'll get onto I won't get into quartal harmony at the moment, but you can build chords out of any intervals. Tertian harmony is just building chords out of thirds. Okay? Remember, we talked about thirds, we did it in intervals. This is why learning your intervals is important. So we've got tertian harmony is building them out of thirds. Quartal harmony would be building them out of fourths. You could have quintal harmony, which builds them out of fifths. We're looking at tertian harmony. So the basics of this, you take a major third and a minor third, right? So think about what a major third is from C. C to E is a major third. C to E flat is the minor third. So we've got that down, right? Now, I also think it's worth knowing these intervals on 2 strings and on 1 string in terms of the pattern side of things. So C to E there, that's 3rd fret A string to 2nd fret on the D string, that's a major 3rd, and then 3rd fret on the A string to the 1st fret on the D string, that's a minor 3rd. So get those 2 down first. Major 3rd, minor 3rd. Happy, sad. But remember, it's C to E, so we could also play C to E or C to E flat on this same string. So there's a major 3rd, C to that E, 3rd to 7th fret, and 3rd to 6th fret is the minor 3rd. And you're probably aware of that pattern. Or so there's that minor 3rd, okay? Or there. So we've got 2 different places to learn them, right? So there's a formula for each of there's 4 main triads, right? So we've got major, minor, augmented, and diminished. So if you ever see a C major triad, it sounds like that. A C minor triad sounds like this. Don't worry, I'll describe them in a minute. There's a C minor triad. Here's a C augmented triad, which sounds quite spacey. And here's a diminished, which sounds quite horror film, right? So I'll just go through them again. So they're the 4 of them. We've got major, which if I move it around, that's a major triad. Minor triad, here we go, sad times. That's the minor triad. Now augmented again. Spacey, sci-fi, right? Now diminished. There's minor and here's diminished. So we're going in further down the horror road. And now back to just plain old sad, right? So major, minor, augmented, and diminished. There's a formula for them. Remember how with the major scale we had a formula for that? We had whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Well, we've got a formula for the triads. And it's using these thirds. So for a major triad, it's a major 3rd and a minor 3rd. So we stack these thirds. That'll make sense in a minute when I do it. So major 3rd and a minor 3rd. Then for the minor triad, it's minor 3rd and a major 3rd. And then for an augmented triad, it's major 3rd and a major 3rd. And then for a diminished triad, it's minor 3rd and a minor 3rd. So it's all the combinations of those thirds, right? Major, minor, minor, major, 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 minor, minor, right? So what's that look like? Well, let's do it on C. So we've got C. Major triad is a major 3rd and a minor 3rd. So we've got the major 3rd. So C up to E, that's the major 3rd. And then from that note, we build a minor 3rd. E to G. Major 3rd, minor 3rd. See what I'm doing? Stacking thirds. Major 3rd, minor 3rd. C, E, E, G. C, E, G. That's how we come up with. So that's a major triad. Major 3rd and a minor 3rd. Minor triad is a minor 3rd and a major 3rd. So it's the opposite. So let's take a minor 3rd. So like I said, we can also do it on the same string. So we'll do it on here just to make life easy for ourselves. So we've got C to E flat is the minor 3rd. And then from the E flat, we build a major 3rd. So E flat up to the G. So we've got C, E flat, and G. Okay? Stacked thirds. So again, let's just go through those. C, E, and G was the major 3rd. The major triad. And then C, E flat, G was the minor triad. Now, remember what I'm saying with this. We're stacking thirds. Now, this is something that some people miss out on in terms of the kind of basis of their of the knowledge of these things. Because sometimes you'll just think, oh, what's a major triad? Oh, it's root, major 3rd, and perfect 5th. Yeah, it is. Measured from the root note. Yeah. You could describe it like that, and that's how I would normally describe it. But the actual construction of them is from stacking thirds. Okay? So a minor triad, you could say, oh, it's a root, minor 3rd, and a perfect 5th. And like I say, that's how I would normally describe it. But there's no getting away from the fact that it is stacked thirds, right? So, augmented triad, what was that? Major and a major. C up to E, that's a major 3rd. Then what do we have from E up for a major 3rd? G sharp. C, E, G sharp. So that's an augmented triad. Spacey. Then for a diminished, minor 3rd and a minor 3rd. C to E flat. Then from the E flat, we want another minor 3rd. We get a G flat. Okay, that's the scary one that you heard there. Okay, and that's your 4 triads. That's it. Okay, major third, minor third, minor third, major third, major third, major third, minor third, minor third. Right? It's just 4 combinations of those 2 thirds, right? And so once you know that, then you do look at them as measured from the root note. It's a lot easier to think like that. So C, E, G, root, major third, perfect fifth. We're measuring from the root note now rather than the intervals from each one. So C, E, G, root, major third, perfect fifth. For the minor triad, root, minor third, perfect fifth. For the augmented triad, root, major third, augmented fifth. And then for the diminished triad, root, minor third, diminished fifth. See how I'm describing it as intervals. If you don't know your intervals, that's all good. That won't make any sense. That's why you need to learn the interval thing first, rather than thinking, okay, well, I've learned scales, now I can move on to arpeggios. No. Get the intervals down right at the start, and all of this stuff will make a lot more sense. If you know what those intervals are, and I just say, oh, it's root, minor third, and diminished fifth, you'd be like, oh, right, okay. It doesn't matter what the root note is. You know, you could be playing it from anywhere, from F, A flat, and then up to the B. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. Well, it's actually a C flat. Let's get it right with the intervals. So that'd be an F diminished. So that's triads. Now I'm going to show you a little thing that I just made here. I think it's this one. So there you can see all of those thirds in action. So I've got the chord construction there. We've got triads down one side. You can see there those thirds: major third, minor third to a major third, etc. Now look on this other side with the 7th chords. So again, we're adding thirds. It's all that tertian harmony. Now you can see here that there are, on the triad side of things, we've got 4 of them. And then we've got 8 7th chords. And that's because all we're doing is adding another third. So let's say that we've got the, let's say we've got a major triad. C, E, and G, okay? Remember what it was? It was stacked thirds, C to E and E to G. Let's stack another third. Let's stack a major third on the top. C, E, G, add a major third to the G, we've got the B. That's a major 7 arpeggio. That's that chord, right? Okay, so we've added a major third onto the top of the major triad. You could see that as major third and then a minor third and then a major third, but there's no point in doing that. We're just adding a third onto each triad, right? So because we've got 2 thirds, we've got the major third and the minor third, well, we're adding them to 4 of the triads, so that gives us 2 new 7th chords for each of the triads, which is why we end up with 8 7th chords. Now, there are other chords that you can create like this that you would class as non-tertian chords, but we won't go into that for now. So I'll just very quickly run down what this would be, right? So C, E, G up to the B, that's a C major 7. If I was to play a minor third from that G instead to the B flat, that's a dominant 7 chord. Why is it called a dominant 7 chord? Well, remember what I said about the scale degrees earlier, tonic, supertonic, mediant, etc. The 5th was the dominant. When we look at chords within a key, the only chord in the key that's one of these is the one on the dominant scale degree, which is why it's called a dominant 7 chord, right? So we've got major 7, and then we've got the dominant 7. So one is a major triad with a major third on the top, the other one is a major triad with a minor third on the top. Then if we just look at them as intervals relative to the root note, you've got root, major third, perfect 5th, major 7th, or root, major third, perfect 5th, minor 7th. All depends on how you want to see it, right? Next up, we do the same thing with the minor triad. So let's take the minor triad, C, E flat, and G. Okay, add the major third on the top. Okay, so from the G, we're adding a major third, which gives us a B. Oops. So that is a C minor major 7 chord, which is a kind of odd sounding kind of chord. It's a major triad with a major 7th on the top. So root, minor third, perfect 5th, major 7th. If we do the same thing with the minor triad, adding a minor third on the top from the G, we get a B flat, which gives us a minor 7 chord. Very common chord. Jazzy. Okay, so that's just a minor triad with a minor third on the top. So which relative to the root note is root, minor third, perfect fifth, minor seventh. Now you can see when I'm describing these why people will kind of take a shortcut with it and ignore the tertian thing with all the major third and major third and a minor third, all that stuff, because it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. It's easier to say root, minor third, perfect fifth, minor seven, or even easier, 1 flat 3 5 flat 7. That's how you'll generally see a minor 7 being described. But think about how I've described all this. We've actually looked at why it's that, why we've got this tertian harmony working. We've got these thirds stacked. You're understanding where it came from, rather than just, oh yeah, there's this 1 flat 3 5 flat 7, man. Yeah, I don't know. It just is. You know, you've got, So that's the minor 7 chord. So let's look back at my little chart that I've made. So now look at those seventh chords again. For the major 7, that was a major triad with a major third. For the dominant 7, we had major triad with a minor third. Okay? So that's the 2 seventh chords based on the major triad. Then we've got 2 more seventh chords based on the minor triad, minor 7 and minor major 7. Minor triad with a minor third, minor triad with a major third. But we've got 4 others. Obviously, we've got to do the same thing with the augmented triad and then with the diminished triad. Now, this is where it gets a little bit weird, because with the augmented triad, let's just work through the notes of the augmented triad. So on C, we'd have C, E, and G sharp. Remember, it was the root, major third, and augmented fifth there, right? So 1, 3, sharp 5. So that's the augmented triad. So now let's add the major third onto the top. Now we're on the G sharp, so what's a major third up from that going to be? Look at what we get. If we take that major third pattern, play it on the G sharp, we're back at C, which was the root note of the chord. Okay, because it's a symmetrical chord. It just kind of repeats at the octave. It's stacked major thirds. Major third, 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 major third. Blah, blah, blah. So it just keeps going, right? It just repeats at that octave. So if we add the major third, it doesn't really do anything. We don't create a new chord. So what we have is we can do the one with the minor third. So from the G sharp, we can actually go up to here, which gives us the B, right? So that would be a major 7, because think about what that interval is. It's a major 7 sharp 5 chord. So it's the same as a dominant 7. Sorry, a major 7, but with a sharpened fifth. Okay, so that's a major 7 sharp 5, and then you can also, as a kind of, you can either see it as a non-tertian chord, or you can see it as a diminished third that we're using for it. You can just do the same thing that we do with the other chords and actually use the flat 7 in there, the minor 7, which gives us the dominant 7 chord. So it's a dominant 7 sharp 5. So that's where it gets weird. That's the augmented ones. Don't worry too much about all that, all the stacking thirds for that one. Just learn what the actual intervals are within there, that it's root and then the major third, then the sharpened fifth, and either the major 7th or the minor 7 on the top, right? And then for the diminished one, that's great. We can just do all the same stuff. So we've got root, minor third, and then that diminished fifth for the diminished triad. Spooky. So we've got that. So we're on the flat 5, that G flat. We're going to add a major third on the top. So what do we get? G flat up to the B flat. Okay, that's a minor 7 flat 5 chord. Okay, so it's root, minor third, diminished fifth, and the minor 7th. Remember, I'm talking in terms of intervals. Instead of going 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. If you know your intervals, which is why I said learn the intervals at the beginning, and stress that fact all the time, all of this makes perfect sense. But if you don't have your intervals down, and that all sounds like a load of nonsense, then me sat there going root, minor third, diminished fifth, minor 7th will make no sense whatsoever, right? So we've got up to that diminished fifth. Let's now put the minor third on the top, which gives us a type of B. But we've already gone down to the B flat, so what's this going to be? So we put a minor third up from that G flat, and look what note we're on. Now, is that an A? Well, no, because G to A of some kind would be a second. Remember what I said right at the start. It's in alphabetical order. Needs to be a B of some kind, which is why that would be a B double flat, right? You might be thinking, what the hell? When do you use double flats? Well, here you go. A C diminished 7 chord has a B double flat in it. Now, obviously, in regular writing, if you were to see that written out for a pianist or an arpeggio or something like this, you'd probably write it as an A natural, because just for simplicity. Because there is two things to bear in mind when you're writing music, and this gets into more about arranging and stuff. And I've done a lot of copy work over the years. When you're doing copy work or you're doing arrangements and writing this stuff out, you have two different ways of looking at something or writing something. You can either write it theoretically correct, and actually that can turn into gray areas sometimes, because things can get really, really weird. So you can write it as it's supposed to be, like that, as a B double flat, or you can write it for the ease of reading, for the performer. So you think performer rather than the kind of theory of it. So you think performer, they don't want to see double flats. They're going to want to see naturals more. So you'd write it as an A natural. So that really comes into play. If any of you are really want to get into all this kind of music theory stuff, I would advise reading a book by a guy called Gardner Reed called Modern Rhythmic Notation. And it's a real eye-opener in terms of different problems and puzzles that you kind of get in composition. And most of it's to do with contemporary classical, but there is a lot of stuff from the normal classical periods, like more romantic period than anything. But you've got things like by guys like Stockhausen or George Crumb and people like that, where you've got, or even Stravinsky. I mean, you've got these parts where it could be one of several things, and it's like, it just, especially from a rhythmic standpoint, and you're like, how are you supposed to write this? Anybody that thinks that written music is the be-all and end-all of music, and that you can do anything with written music, well, they need to look at some of these kind of conundrums that you get with writing. You can't just write it. Like I say, a lot of it's about writing for the performer. Now, if somebody's going to say, you need to write it for the performer, then they're kind of neglecting the side of it that's the theory side, which is fair enough. But to think that it's always one thing, it's set in stone, is false, because as you can see, there's two different ways of writing that note. One of them is easier to read, but the other one is theoretically correct. And we're talking this stuff I'm talking about is not complicated music theory. This is elementary stuff. So I've just done the basics of creating triads and seventh chords. You need to learn that really early on, and intervals and things like that. This is all really basic stuff. You can run into problems at this level. So again, let's just have a quick look at the chord construction one there. So we've got you can now see the seventh chords. We've got the major triads with the 2/3. We've got the minor triads with the 2/3, augmented with the 2/3, and the diminished triads with the 2/3. So all we're doing is we're building up. We're just starting with basic building blocks of intervals, and then we've combined thirds in this tertian system to create triads, and now we've added another one on top to give us seventh chords. So each time we're just adding one onto the next. Now, I'm running out of time with this, so I could go on forever, but basically you can keep adding those thirds onto the top, and if you do that, I'll just do it from here just to show you as an example, right? So far we've had I'll play it here, so I've got a bit of room to maneuver. If I play a C major triad, right? So we went up through the thirds, major third, then up a minor third, and then I went up, added the seventh. We can add another third on. So at the moment we're on the B, so we move up 2 notes, so like B, C, D. So I've moved up a minor third there. That's given me the 9th. Okay, so that's how you create a 9th chord. We're just adding another third. Add another third on the top. We get the F there, which is the 11th. It's the 4th up an octave, but we've got an 11th. That's what an 11th chord is. We've added that. And then you can go up another. So a third up from the F there is an A. Okay, so we've got root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th. We've just been adding them in 3rd order. So we've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So you start off with triads, then 7th chords, then 9th chords, 11th chords, and 13th chords. 13th chords have got them all in there. Now, when you voice one of these chords, I mean, you don't have to worry about it on bass, but on a piano, I mean, in terms of what the notes are, really, it's all of them. But in terms of voicing, that'd sound awful. Blah, blah, blah. You know, you have all these notes in there. So what you do with voicing, and to have sort of good voicing, or, I mean, you can voice them in many different ways, but you take notes out, because there's certain ones that aren't really doing you any good in there. So for a start, you take the F out there. You don't want that in there. You could even take the 9th out. So really, all you'd end up with is the major 7th and the 13th, and that would still be a major 13th chord. Now, this goes down a long road of music theory. So it's you build on this. We only went to 7th chords, but you can have added note chords where you add a note to the triad. You can have extensions, which are adding notes to the 7th chord. You can have altered extensions where we change the 9th to a flat, we change the 13th to a flat sharp, whatever it is, right? And then you can also have suspended chords. So, like, okay, so you're putting the 4th in there, taking the 3rd out. That would be suspensions. So there's all these different ones, but you start with the basics. You start with triads, then you move to 7th chords, then you move to extensions and added note chords, and move through, right? So there's a very simple order for working through this stuff. And as you do that, you can learn what the chord symbols are for these things, learn the arpeggios of them, so that when you see these chords, you know what they are. If you know what, like, if you give me a piano, even though I'm a pretty crap pianist, really, but like, if you were to give me some, like a chord chart, even if I couldn't just bang them all out straight off because I wouldn't know all the different voicings that would work for it, I can at least work out any chord. You show me a chord and I'll be able to tell you what the notes are in it and then play them. But it's just that I'm just not a very experienced pianist in terms of jazz and stuff, so I'd probably have some pretty naff voicings. Some of them wouldn't be too bad, but there's certain voicings work way better. Yeah, so that's the basics of chord construction. Now, I was going to get into chords within a key, but I think I'm kind of running out of time on it. I think we're gonna go way over on that one. But basically, you can actually build those chords once you've learned what they are. You can take all those chords, move them around. That's a major triad, minor triad. And then you learn what those patterns are. You learn what they are by name. You learn what they sound like. Ba, 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 ba. You learn what they sound like, what they look like, what the notes are, all of that stuff. So you learn all this stuff about these chord tones. And then you can start to play through chord progressions, and you've got a palette of notes. Now, once you've learned what those are and that you can just play the basics of using those basic chord tones through the chord progression, then you can add more notes from scales into the mix, and then beyond that you can start to add chromatic notes into the mix. So then you've actually got this whole big shebang of stuff that you can put all around the framework, which is those chord tones. So on that chord progression that we had let's pick the one that I always use, that 1-6-2-5 progression. So if we had C major, A minor, D minor, G major, or G7, right? So, if I was to play the arpeggios, you can actually hear the chord progression. I'm outlining the chord progression. Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to just play that as a bass line. You could, but you want to start by taking individual chord tones, root notes, and then adding others in there. So, 5th, they're chord tones. 3rd, and different combinations of them, like I said. Now, obviously, like I said, that's a very basic, childlike way of approaching it, but you get to know what those intervals sound like in in isolation. You don't want to just be playing, just through everything. You want to learn to use the chord tones in isolation, just one at a time. Just learn what it's like to use the root and the third together, or what it's like to put a whole arpeggio in, or what it's like root and fifth. Everybody knows root and fifth. Everybody knows that sound. And then beyond that, you can start adding the scale notes in. So if you know kind of like what the key is or what the modes are, the relative modes for each one of it. So I know that I can join up the third and the fifth there. You wouldn't play that as a bass line. I'm just showing that as a melodic kind of exercise. You learn to actually join up the notes of the chords or approach them. There's many melodic devices you can use, but it all starts with those chord tones. So that's just a kind of a practical kind of perspective of why you might learn them as a bass player. But like I said, in terms of actually studying the music theory side of all of this, there's a very ordered kind of way of doing it. But you want to do it in the right order, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on it. And it's the kind of thing that we all do when we learn music theory on a kind of formal academic level. I went through all my music theory grades, and a lot of it, once you get beyond like grade 5, is all very, because it goes up to grade 8, it's all very, it's kind of very classical once you get beyond grade 5. But the stuff from grade 1 to grade 5 is very applicable to everything. And you learn all about all of the intervals, and they'll show you a particular interval on the stave in the exam, and you've got to say what it is, whether it's like a double diminished second or something stupid, all the weird stuff. But it really helps. Now, because I obviously can't keep going with all this stuff, I'm just going to run out of time eventually. Like I said, there's a sale on at Talking Bass for the Black Friday thing. So if any of you are wanting to go on a deep dive with this stuff, many of you have mentioned it before. The Chord Tone Essentials course is that deep dive into all of this stuff that goes right into it all. It starts with those intervals, just like I did there, and it goes right through to playing walking bass lines, solos, fills, everything through chord progressions, using chord tones and all those melodic devices I was talking about. And the second module of it shows you how to play those chord tones all over the fretboard. So Chord Tone Essentials is a real good deep dive into it. So if any of you are wanting to get into this stuff, I would definitely recommend the Chord Tone Essentials course over at Talking Bass, presented by little old me. And there's the 30% discount on it at the moment because of the Black Friday thing. So Chord Tone Essentials is good. Simple Steps to Sight Reading is another one that's good. You might not think it is because on first appearance, because you think, oh, well, that's just learning how to read music. I say just. I mean, it's probably the most important thing you could ever do. But that covers a lot of stuff as well. You learn a lot about all that a lot about that enharmonic stuff, because you have to learn about how sharps and double flats and double sharps and where you'll see them. You learn bits of the theory as well as to why you see certain things, and you also learn about the notation and the sort of text notation, things like that. So that's another good one. And the Scale Essentials is a good follow-up to the Chord Tone Essentials. The Walking Bass course is a good application of all this, because then you get to apply all of those chord tones and all of the scale tones. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a sales pitch at the end of it, based on all of that. But if any of that floats your boat, I'm sure some of you were just going, woo, all the way through, like, what the hell is he talking about? But like I say, with the course stuff, like the Chord Tone Essentials, you can take your own time. There's no time limit on it, and you get it forever. So you can just go through each lesson over and over and over again if you want, and it'll, until you get it. And there's hundreds of pages of lesson material to work through as well. So instead of it just being me like waffling on like this, you actually get it in writing, and you can sit working through exercises. So yeah, so I would advise on the Chord Tone Essentials if you're into all that stuff. So I'll leave it there for the lesson part. I'll look at all the comments now. But yeah, I was hoping to get into the chords and the key thing, but I think that stuff I've covered is probably more important, really, because if you can get that down as a foundation, all the other stuff just makes more sense. Okay, so I'll hang around for another 10-20 minutes maybe. Right, I'm going to go right, but I can't go right back up, can I? Let's look at it all. bloody, how many we got in at 177. I'm just gonna see what people are writing through it. Everybody's saying I'm lost. Yeah, I worried a little bit about that. The light bulb went off. Firedrakes at 18 said, Debbie, the light bulb went off with a portion of major and minor scales and being able to pick up most gospel songs. Right, okay. Empress Iron Bladder. Mark's great here. Thanks for the email. Is this what I would learn in the scales or sight reading course? Chord Tone Essentials, like I said. This, okay, so that's... Mark, if you could only use 5 scales, what would your choices be? Also, blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about scales too much. Chord tones is the way to go. That's scales. It's hard to explain why scales aren't that important, unless they are. But in terms of the stuff that most people are thinking about, really, you want to think about chord tones and then see the scale notes as connections between chord tones. In terms of a scale used for a key, like in modal music, then it's a thing, then it's important. But that's not what most people are thinking. They're thinking, oh yeah, I want to run around. That's all bass players think about. Usually with all that stuff, it's like, oh yeah, so I'll learn a Mixolydian scale. You know, they're just thinking about these, just running. Or creating maybe a melody of something. But chord tone, think chord tones. Get the chord tones down and then move into scales. And this is coming from somebody that has a course on scales, and I could sit there talking, about scales for the same amount of time that I've just been talking about chords. But I think the majority of people, when they ask that, kind of don't know what they're... Well, they do know what they're asking. That's a bit condescending to say that they don't, but might be getting confused as to why you would use chord tones in preference, as being preferable to learning just scales. It all joins up in the end. I mean, it all just turns into a big mush of stuff, musical material. Forget theory, forget all of it. It's just stuff. It's just musical stuff. It's just sound. Yeah, in terms of actual application, in the sense that most bass players are thinking, not composers, not arrangers, it's really all the chord tone stuff. Because you do have to draw a line between being a performer, maybe an improvising performer, or just a plain old bass player that's playing in a classic rock band or whatever. You have to draw a line between that and being a composer and an arranger, because a lot of people, they start looking at stuff that's more applicable to arranging and composition, when in fact they're actually just wanting to be a jam, which is a different thing altogether. Yeah, Debbie was finding it a little bit tough. I'll jump down a few of these because I don't want to... Obviously, there's going to be more comments. Luke found the stacking thirds. So stacking thirds, yep, a lot of people are finding the stacking thirds to be useful. Yep, and like I said, that was the light bulb moment for me. I mean, I've had a lot of light bulb moments in the past, but the stacking thirds thing, when I first learned about that, so we're talking 1993, and I just remember seeing that, and it just made sense. I was like, oh my God, I get it. And then I understood all chords all of a sudden. It was like, oh, right, I know how to make this chord. And all I had to do then was add the labels to them. But it all made sense. And once you kind of get an idea for why they're called, how the labels are attached, like a minor major 7, you think, okay, well, it's a minor chord with a major 7th on the top. It ceases to be, oh, what the hell's a minor major 7? Oh, man, that sounds weird. No, it's a minor chord with a minor triad with a major 7th on the top. If you know the minor triad and you know a major 7th, it's really obvious. Will you keep this archived? Yeah, I will do. It'll just be there online. Yeah. Let me just go a little bit further up. go up a little bit more because I've missed out quite a few there. Oh, Derek was in. Oh, I missed Derek. Damn it. I should have looked across. Derek Bennett was in. I love Derek. If you're still there, Derek, give us a shout. If you've not seen the interview that I did with Derek Bennett, that's always worth a watch. That's on... just go over to the website and they're all there. There's loads of interviews there. But I met up with Derek when I went over to NAMM. And he was taller than I expected. When I went up and first time we'd met him face to face, and I was like, "Man, you're taller than I thought you'd be." I mean, he's not massively tall, but he's taller than I am, and I'm not that short. I'm like 5'10". Although I used to be taller than that. I was actually I was more like 5'11". I'm just under 5'10" now, but I've lost 2 inches in height from playing bass, believe it or not. My back got really messed up, and a lot of you will know that story just from me telling it before. But yeah, I've actually lost 2 inches in height through it, and all my friends and family kind of they noticed it, and I've told them about it. Like my brother used to be a lot shorter than me, and I remember I went up to visit, and we stood next to each other, and I'm like, yeah, see, I've lost those 2 inches, and it's like he's taller than me now. It's crazy. So I've got all the way back up there. I'm not approaching these comments in a very logical manner, am I? Forgive my this that I'm doing. I'm just reading through, trying to find things that I don't want to miss things. Right, I got down to here, so. Right, so first says, why C major 13 requires the 13 to hit a black key in the piano? No, it doesn't. My ear was calling the black key when I tried the piano. No. C major 13, so if it's on a C, it's going to be C, E, G, B for your 7th chord, and then you can add the A in there. Now, a complete full one would be the fully extended one of C, E, G, and then B, and then D, and then F, and then A. So you'd have the 9th and the 11th and the 13th, but you don't put those all in because it's some crap. So you take out the F and you can take out the D. You can put the D in. You can put them all in if you want. There's plenty of classical, contemporary classical things where you get that, and you get these kind of harmonic projection things where you do get these sort of like sets of thirds going up, and it's like blah 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 blah, blah. And you get them all together and you get this big clustered sound. But for your average kind of 13th chord, you're really going to have like a C major 7 with and just an added 13th, and that added 13th is going to be major. It's not a minor 6, it's a major 6, so it's a C and an A. In C major, the F would want to resolve to E, the closest chord tone. Yes, if it's a C major chord. It's relative to the chords. Something's just clicked there. That's good. I'm the best teacher ever. That's good. That's always good to know. You have to tell American immigration. Right, okay, right now I'm coming down here. I'm just skipping through them quick now. Actually, that's good advice. Old Uncle Mick said, practice it on your bass. It gets easier. Yeah, it's true. Try applying all that stuff that I said to your bass, because if you know when you're just hearing it in terms of a load of like verbal diarrhea, it just ends up being, oh, there's this third, and then you stack it, and there's another third, and there's this minor third, and a major third, and a flat five, and a diminished fifth, and a diminished fifth, and we've got diminished seventh, and then we've got a major seventh, and a major seventh, a minor seventh, dominant seventh, a major. It sounds like that. Seventh, third, but if you know the intervals on your instrument, and then you put them all together, and you start working through it. I mean, obviously, you're not going to learn all of that in one go like this. You need to work through each one of them, and with an analytical eye, looking at them, and then once you've learned those intervals, even if it's just as patterns, see them in everything that you do. See them in all these arpeggios. So if I'm making up something like a little fill or something, I might use fourths, and that's why you could just use fourths or fifths. You can use all these different things like fourths and thirds in isolation, and you don't have to, like if you learn a scale, you don't have to play all up and down in a linear motion or like an arpeggio. You don't have to do that. Like there, I'm like, you can put things in however you want them. And like I say, fourths, which has a completely different sound. And then fifths. So if I'm on here, you can use fifths in isolation, you can use sixths, you can use any of those intervals. And it's a good way of kind of getting used to using intervals. Don't just think of them as these kind of theoretical concepts. I mean, you have to learn them as that at the start, I guess, but then try using them. And that's why when you're saying about like scales and things like that, you can actually break up scales into the component parts. So instead of just looking at C major as a C major scale, you learn it. You learn the interval, the actual chords that are in there as arpeggios. You learn thirds. You can just see all the thirds in there, fourths, fifths. You can just play these different intervals through it, just picking them out, from the notes that are there, and it kind of makes for a much more interesting kind of sound rather than it just being, how many times are you going to do that in your life, in a song, it's just not going to happen, is it? Oops. Getting carried away until I've run over it with the stool. It's probably going to come out again, isn't it? Right. So, am I on? Yeah. Oops. That's quite... I've actually suddenly got quite a nice slap sound all of a sudden. The strings are dead, by the way. That's why I was just doing that, because I was like, hold on. It doesn't sound that dead. Bottom string does. Yeah. Okay, a bit further down. So I'm right down at the bottom here. So... Okay, so everybody... I think everybody's got the right idea that you need to learn your intervals. Will there be answers to the questions at the end? Hi, Mark. You assisted greatly in making me a semi-competent bass player. Thank you very much. Hi, when do you usually go live? Not very often, to be honest. I do go live at the website for customers, basically. So if you've bought courses, I have usually a weekly hang. I didn't have one this week, but I do them over there most weeks. So if you buy a course, you get access to all the live hangs. Also, it's worth mentioning, I better do a little bit of a not a sales pitch, but just advertise the fact that if you all got the app, because now there's the app out for Talking Bass, so the members area. I'm sure that most of you are signed up to the members area. But if you go into the members area where there's the forum and all that stuff that I keep talking about in the lessons, you can now go. So if you've got an account, you get the app, the TalkingBass app on. It's free on Android and iOS, and then you can sign in with the credentials that you normally use, and you'll have access to all the stuff in the app. And if you've got courses, you can actually do the courses in the app, and it's way better. So that's a thing that I developed earlier this year. So that's worth looking at. And if you've not signed up to TalkingBass, the website, get over there and do that, because there's a lot of stuff in there. And not just the courses, not just the paid stuff. I mean, all the free stuff. There's a ton of stuff. Most of the people here that are signed up, they know what I mean, And just in terms of the courses, just as another little plug, because there's that Black Friday sale still running. So there's 30% off all the courses. So in terms of the courses, we've got the beginner bass course, which is for absolute beginners. Basic fundamentals, which is kind of a leveler thing. That's the next kind of stage on from there. So I cover technique and setups, bass setup, and a bunch of stuff. Effects, how to use those. Just a lot of stuff. Scales, bit of reading, bit of everything. So it's like a kind of leveler. The scale essentials, and chord tone essentials. So chord tone essentials is the one I was talking about. That's the theory one. Scale essentials kind of does the same thing, but with scales. Then there's the ear training course. So I've got an ear training for bass thing there. It's the first volume of that. The best one out of them all, by far, is the Simple Steps to Sight Reading course, which is huge. So it's like 25 hours of video, 700 pages of exercises. It's massive. So there's that one. What else is the chords for bass guitar? Don't confuse chords and chord tones. The chord tones one is the theory one that I was talking about that teaches you all the harmony. Chords is, basically, just learning chords, And what else is there over there? Might be it for now. So anyway, so there's 30% off all those things. Chord tones open the door for me getting gigs more than anything else. Well, yep, it will, because, like, for instance, if you want to learn how to do walking bass lines, you can't learn to do walking bass lines without knowing about your chord tones. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how good your ear is. You really need to know about chord tones. Mark, is it useful for a gigging rock bass player to practice around the circle of fifths or circle of fourths? You don't really have to. I wouldn't see it in that way. For instance, when I was first doing when I was at music college, I was in a lot of thrash metal bands, and like ska bands and punk bands and things like that. I did a lot of that stuff. And just because it was the time of, it was early 90s. And I didn't really think about whether the things I was learning at college would be applied. It didn't really matter. I was building up this kind of knowledge base that then applies to everything else. I don't really see it like that. The circle of fourths and fifths isn't by itself going to give you more, is not going to improve your gigging rock bass playing as and of itself. It's more that it adds this kind of foundation, this kind of knowledge and theory foundation. Where can I find your page so I can subscribe to your channel? What do you mean, the YouTube channel? You can just subscribe on this page. I don't know if you can do it right now. You should be able to do. But if you want to go to TalkingBass, just put TalkingBass into YouTube. But forget the YouTube one. You want to go over to TalkingBass.net. The website, just TalkingBass.net. It's pretty easy to find. And then subscribe there. Working with modes helped open up bassline composition for me. Okay. I'm a true beginner. Where should I learn first? Well, you can learn I've got to say, even though I've got a beginner course, which I would advise going and doing, there's the beginner's course over at TalkingBass, but I would also advise getting a one-to-one tutor, at least for a little while. You don't need to go with them forever. I mean, if you've got an amazing teacher, then yeah, that's great. But I think it's always good to have somebody that can sit there with you and actually look at you physically playing. And if there's nobody around that can do any decent lessons around, get some Skype lessons from somebody. Because at least they can see what you're doing wrong. It's like when people ask me questions in the comments and that. Sometimes they'll ask technical questions, and I can't. It's hard to really give an answer to some of them because I can't see what they're doing. You know, when they say, "Oh, I can't stretch between this note and this note," and I'm like, "Well, there's certain things that you need to be doing with your technique." Love to know if you resolve to the closest chord tone from 45 Kelly Green. You can, or you don't have to. It's completely down to you. It's just that if you don't, then it won't sound resolved. If that answer kind of answers what you were saying or asking. It's all about tension and release. So for instance, if there's a C major chord, right? If I was to play, okay, if I was to play, let me try and do this with. So here's a C major chord, right? And I'm going to play an F. Can you hear how it just sounds wrong, right? Now listen to this. Okay? So if it's accented, or I draw attention to it before I resolve it, then it needs resolving. But listen to this now. I'm going to use an F between an E and a G. I'm going to play E, F, G. Oops. I'm going to try and keep the other notes ringing out. There's an F, but it was in between the G and the E. Notice how there's not that feeling of needing this resolution because it's just a part of the line. It's just a passing tone. And now, if I accent it, it needs resolving. So it all depends on context. There's something I'm missing. How do you find the minor thirds in other strings to make the chords? A minor third is just a minor third. So if you play on a C and a minor third is E flat, there's an E flat. Forget about fretboard patterns at first. You try and think in terms of the notes and then apply it to the fretboard. So you've got C to E flat, C to E flat. You could play an E flat anywhere really, but there's always going to be one on the same string and then there's going to be one on the next string. So it's worth learning those two patterns: C to E flat, C to E flat. But when you do it on a chord like that, there's that minor third, C to E flat, and then the E flat to the G. You can actually see the thirds when you play them as a block chord. There's a C minor. Let's move that finger out of the way. There's the minor third, there to there, and there's the major third. So you can see the stacked thirds. Derek is amazing. Yes, he is. He is amazing. And I can vouch for that because I've seen him up close and personal playing. And I can tell you, I saw a really good little jam session when I went over to NAMM, and there was Bobby Lewis, who is phenomenal. And there was Derek, and who else was there? There was somebody else. And they were all sort of doing this jam thing. And they had some guy breakdancing in the crowd at the same time. Anyway, they were sort of noodling over this stuff. And man, it was just stunning. Santiago says, "Hey Mark, greetings from Mexico. Thanks for your awesome business." Thank you. Right, I'll be getting off in a sec. It's nearly 10 o'clock here at night, and been in here all day pretty much. Essential scales plus chord tones plus walking bass. Yep. Always wanted to thank you for talking normal. I can't make it through instructions that are at half speed. I'm a bass player and played all my life by ear. I'm learning theory with you, and you're the best. Thank you. Hey, Mark. Greetings from Brazil. Yep. Hello. It's a shame everybody's getting here late. I mean, this is 2 hours that we've been on here now, and I've done a really big, long lesson. So if you're all just arriving now, this is going to be live from, it's still going to be up on YouTube, so you can still find the thing. So just look on the channel and you'll see it, so you can watch the whole thing. Is the app Scales for Bass Guitar yours? Yep, that's another one, but that's a paid one. And that's like a thing that shows you all different scales on the fretboard. I'm going to do another one, the same, that's for chord tones as well. I'll be playing at your speed, Mark, in 20 years. Nah, it's just practice. Mark, I've had teachers tell me it's essential to early on learn to hear the differences between major and minor. Do you have any tips on how to most efficiently do this? Yep, easy. What, between major and minor chords? Here's a major chord, and here's a minor chord. What's the difference? Major. You have to make a decision as to what it is that you hear, because it's very different for different people. Some people will hear something and they'll think, oh, that's the chord from such and such a song, or that's the interval from such and such. Like if you hear this interval, I mean, there's a million and one different things that you might hear. As I play it, what are you going to sing on the end of it? Well, you could go bum bum da 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 ba ba, about bum 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 bum. There's a load of different things. Bum bum da 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 ba bum. It's loads of different things that you can actually think of, right? And you need to do it like that rather than just thinking in terms of the fretboard. You need to actually hear it like that. So what do you hear there? The difference between those? Well, one of them's fairly happy, that one, major, and then minor is fairly sad. Now, that's not always going to be the case, because if I did this, it kind of starts to muddy the waters a little bit. I mean, because depending on what the context is, that one doesn't necessarily sound as happy, even though they're both major chords. Okay? But there you go. Major and minor. Major is happy, minor is sad. Augmented is spacey. So that's the spacey one. And diminished is quite evil sounding. Okay? So, I mean, this is all about ear training. I mean, you could do the ear training course, but there's thousands of methods for, well, not thousands of methods, but there's, solfege is a really good way to do it, but all ear training methods are going to have an element of listening to a chord and chord recognition, listening to a chord and then having to say, that's minor, that's major, that's augmented, that's diminished, that's major 7, that's minor 7, inversions of chords, all that kind of stuff. Basically listening to it and trying to recognize it. But it kind of has to be you. I mean, with intervals, I mean, if you were to listen to this, with a major 7th, I just end up thinking of it moving up to I hear it resolving, actually. For what do some people think for these others? For a third, to be honest, I think I kind of think of an arpeggio. If I was to think of a mnemonic, I don't really think of them like that anymore. But when you're first learning them, it's good to have these little mnemonics. So you think, okay, well, what's that? Now, I mean, some people say Amazing Grace for the perfect fourth, but I think that's a really bad one to use, because actually Amazing Grace is actually a fifth to a root note. It's actually, I mean, I'm doing it from C there, C to F. Well, that would actually be in F if I did that. So Amazing Grace isn't a good one to do for a perfect fourth, even though you will sometimes see people say that that's one. It is a perfect fourth in terms of the actual first two notes, but it's actually the fifth of the key moving to the root note. Have you ever seen Ryan Martini's bass playing? Yep. I was thinking of getting him for an interview, actually. I'll probably do a Ryan Martini bass line at some time, at some point. How often do you go live? I've already answered that. You asked that earlier on. So I don't go live on YouTube hardly ever. It's very much usually when there's either sales on or special events or Christmas or things like that. But it's not a regular thing. It used to be. I used to do it every Saturday and Sunday, twice each day. And I used to sit there with a glass of wine, getting hammered, doing it. It used to be really good fun. And then it just started destroying my channel because if you don't get as many, you never get as many hits on live as you do on your normal videos. That's just the nature of it. And so if you start doing too much live, it starts to have a detrimental effect on the actual on your channel, unless you do it right. Rick Beato's mastered it, and some channels are kind of basically live anyway. They're all live, and so they kind of get around it. But for channels like mine, the more live that I did, the more the algorithm used to think, oh, his channel's going downhill because he's not getting as many hits, and it kind of doesn't push you in the same way. Right, I've got to get moving. Right, we're getting into like quite a... So I won't be able to answer all the last few questions there because each one of them is going to be like a really long answer, and like I really do need to get going now. I've been here for 2 hours doing this thing, and just to let you know, I have this really bad acid reflux thing that I've had for the past few months that's been really playing havoc with me, and it's not too bad now. I'm not as bad as I was, but yeah, I think it's a lot of stress things and stuff like that. But it's you can hear my voice is starting to go croaky at the moment, and I start to lose my voice a lot faster than I used to. So once I get to this point, it's like I'm really finding it hard to speak. So I won't carry on anymore. So anyway, I'll get moving, and if you need to, go back through all the stuff, if you've only just arrived, go check out the video once I've finished this. It'll still be live on the channel, so you can just go back and watch the whole thing as a whole deep dive into the sort of basic theory. And like I say, we've got the course. All the courses are on sale, 30% off this week. It's the latter end of the Black Friday sale, so go check those out. There's the Chord Tone Essentials is the main one that's related to all this stuff. So if you want to get into all that stuff, like after you've finished watching it and you're there scratching your head going, man, this stuff's hard, check out that course, and that'll ease you through it a lot better. I tried to get it all done really fast in this one. Cool. All right then, everybody. Lovely to see you and talk to you, and I'll hopefully see you again soon. See you later.